Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another show here on the Comic Art Live channel. We've got some celebrities in the audience tonight, some comic artists that I know, John Beatty, Yannick Paquette. Nice to have both of you here today. We're going to have a good show. We've got Kevin Nowlan back on. He was here last spring, and he, as you know, is going to OAX in January. We wanted to bring him back on to talk a little bit about what he's been up to the last few months, and also talk about the upcoming show and some other things, what he's been doing. So I'm not going to leave him in the green room here any longer, so we can just jump right into the show. Kevin, how you doing?
Doing okay. Doing all right.
Well, that's a loaded question, of course, because I know that you are recovering from a bout of COVID.
Yeah, just like I was telling you earlier, this is my first good day because I tested positive on Wednesday and then was about 50-50 yesterday and woke up feeling pretty good this morning. So it was good timing.
Well, that's a good thing. You were out at a convention you mentioned last weekend. What show did you go to?
It's the smallest one we do every year, which is ironic. This is the one where I finally, after 4 years of avoiding COVID, I finally got it. This tiny little show in Wichita, but I guess it was and 2 weeks after I'd gotten the new vaccine. So, but I also credit that with having very minimal symptoms and also getting over it so quickly. So
Right. I mean, it's surprising it's in your own backyard, basically, at the smallest show that you
yeah,
go to. Do any
yeah.
other creators set up at that show?
Yeah, that's usually where I see Andy Parks, Phil Hester, John Lucas. I describe it as an annual family reunion because most shows they have different people. They rotate different guests every year. This one they bring back a lot of the regulars every year, and this is about the only time we get to see each other. We're all friends and we all have a great time.
Well, yeah, Phil's somebody I've got to get on the show. I haven't. We had him on. Gosh, it feels like over 3 years ago for one of our Comic Art Live panels, and we only got to talk to him for an hour. And I didn't get to do the interview, but I mean, such a talented guy. He's been in the industry for a long time, and he's got one heck of an original art collection.
I was gonna say yes. I keep bugging him to do what Andy Parks and I did several years ago, which is at one of these shows where it's within driving distance, bring your portfolio of some of your favorite originals so we can compare notes. And Andy and I had a blast. And Phil and I collect a lot of the same people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm dying to see. I have a very modest collection, as you said. Phil's got an amazing collection of some of the best artwork out there. But we're also big fans of Bob Ochsner, and
Mm-hmm.
occasionally bid against each other when one of those pieces comes up.
Do you
For
know it before
sale.
you're bidding on it that you're both competing for the same thing, or is it only
No, I
after
think
when
we
you
just
realize you've driven
assume
each other
we
up?
assume a lot. Yes. I think his pockets are quite a bit deeper than mine, so who knows how many times I've lost out to him. But I'm just dying to see what he's got,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a few pieces that I'd like to show off to him as well. Oxner's not a household name, so
No.
you run into another Oxner collector. There's got to be at least half a dozen of us out there.
Uh, there's
It's fun.
there's a lot of Oxner art on CAF, I think. I mean, certainly not as much as many other more popular artists, but sure. I mean, he's somebody I think that I wish I had an example of his work. I mean, he's somebody who I've never owned a piece from.
He's one of those artists where I love educating the young people about him because he's
Mm-hmm.
so good. All it takes is a little exposure to it. And you see this humorous stuff, great humor stuff, but also wonderful dramatic work that is, some of those covers are often mistaken for Neil Adams and other artists.
Mm-hmm.
He could do everything and did it well.
So you have a few pieces from Bob yourself, then that
I
that
got
Phil
a
didn't beat
I
you
got
out
a
on.
bunch. I got a bunch, and it's weird because I started buying them back when I swear the internet was new and people, you could count on one hand the people who even knew his name. And like with everything, art was so cheap back then. We always say, we all have these stories of I could have bought that one piece. You see it's worth $100,000 now. I could have bought that for $500 back in 1988 or something.
Hmm.
But yeah, even auctioneer stuff has gone way up in value. So it's amazing.
And we've got collector Mickey Anamantadu's in there, and he says, "Actually, never heard of him."
He's being very sarcastic because
Yes, he is.
he's someone I've had many conversations about auction with Mickey. That's great.
So you're familiar with Mickey then, and
Oh yeah,
yes, he's been
oh
around
yeah.
a long time as an OA collector, that's for sure.
He's got some great pieces. Yes.
Yeah. Let's see, Mickey, your reputation precedes you in
He'd
most.
like to get a hold of a few of these Supergirl pages that I have by auction. I think he's got at least one priceless auctioneer adventure cover
Mhm.
with Supergirl.
Doesn't surprise me. He is he's got one of the nicest collections of DC related art and Marvel too, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's on CAF. He's a big
Yeah.
Legion fan as well. So no,
Right.
we're all familiar with Mickey's collecting habits. Um, let's see. I was just reading there. Yannick said he's had COVID for 3 weeks after New York Comic Con. That was the thing. Did you go?
Oh
Were you at New York? Because that was
no,
the
no,
one where
no.
everybody caught COVID.
Yes. Yeah. I've generally tried. Ironically, I tried to post COVID. Uh, Confine myself to the smaller shows for that very reason. We did a show in New Jersey. I'd call it medium size. It was nowhere near as big as the New York convention, but we it was 30 minutes from Midtown Manhattan, so we took advantage of that and saw a Broadway musical and hung out with a friend. And sure enough, my wife got COVID, um, and I did not, which I didn't understand at the time. And now it's the reverse, where I got it at the show, and she didn't. She's fine. It's just that's the awkwardness of setting this up today, is trying to stay away from her, because I've confined myself to the upstairs, and now I'm downstairs for this. But we've got enough walls enough doors we can close off to keep her safe.
Mm-hmm.
But
Now,
sorry to hear that about Yannick. 3 weeks. That's
yes,
bad. I hope he's feeling better soon. That sucks.
yeah, even Beatty said he picked up something, but that was the thing on Facebook after the show. It seemed like there wasn't many people who didn't say they didn't catch COVID to some degree, one way or another, going to
Yeah.
that show. I mean, I didn't go there either, but and a couple dealer friends of mine that did go didn't get it, but it seemed there were a lot of artists, so it must have been an artist alley, was where the epicenter was, unfortunately.
Yeah. Oh, that's terrible. Dang.
Yeah, we're talking about New York City Comic Con, Jason, and let's see here. So yes, we got it definitely easy, but yeah. So outside of that, it sounds like you've been pretty busy since we were last together back in May or June. I can't recall when, but I know that as as most professionals in the industry go, it's feast or famine, right? It seems like from the emails that we've had, you've had several inking jobs kind of come in and a few cover jobs, and you're either overworked or underworked, right?
Well, it's here recently. Uh, it's mostly been overworked with one big inking job. Um, this Superman Black Label book I'm inking over Brian Hitch. The first issue came out this summer, and unfortunately, we're still working on the second issue, so it will not be out on time. Um, I'm not sure when it will be out, but it'll be delayed quite a bit. But yeah, it's a very people are familiar with Hitch's work.
Mm-hmm.
It's stunningly beautiful, and larger format is perfect for him because he does these amazing large double page spreads or big dramatic. He's a terrific artist. I love the way he lights things and renders, and he never cheats on backgrounds. Every page has detailed background. So it's a huge investment in time.
Hmm.
Um, it's also we got a very good colorist. David Barron is coloring it. I couldn't be more thrilled about that. But yeah, there was a bit of a lull there where I was waiting for pages, so I tried to squeeze in a few extra things. Then um, uh, the three little 9 by 12 sketches that
Right.
we're going to talk about today were done then, and it's nice to have stuff like that where you can just fill in this. I don't want to commit to another project when I'm in the middle of one, because then you have competing deadlines. But it's about by the time we're done, it should be around 150 pages, and we're just a little past the halfway mark. So there's still a pretty big commitment just in that one project there.
Right. Well, Brian, so you worked with Brian a few times before this, right? I mean, I think as
Right.
collaborators, I think, what's your experience with him? It sounds like he gives you pretty finished pencils, and doesn't leave a lot to guesswork as far as like, the figures or the
No,
backgrounds. But yeah, at least
you
because I've
know,
seen some of his pencil work before that, where, before the inkers get it. And it always seems like he's a very detailed, penciler.
yeah, he's amazing. Because I honestly don't know how he does it, because he's incredibly fast. Um, but there's so much on every page. I should also say though, he's also very generous, because there are places where I kind of went in. I never planned to do this, but invariably it happens. I'll say, a little shadow on this, a little reworking here would make this work better in my eyes. And he's been very encouraging about that, saying he wanted a real collaboration, didn't want somebody to just trace the line. So uh, it's turned out to be a really good project. It's also, Mark Waid wrote the story, and it's also a terrific. I read ahead once I got a copy of the script, and it's a terrific story as well. So yeah, CinemaScope, exactly. uh, yeah, so it's turned out to be something I'm very, very proud to be contributing to. It's a very traditional Superman story, which is ironic that it's a black label, because we think of that as this edgy adult material. It's like,
Right.
I haven't seen anything like that yet. I don't, there's nothing that's going to you're going to want to keep away from the little kids or anything like that. But it's also very, very sophisticated in the way it's presented. I feel like it's like, this is yes, it's done a few Superman projects. This is the one I'm probably going to be the most proud of. So
Well, that's good. I mean, given you've worked on the character a bit in the past, that this would be one of the more ones that you feel the best about. That's fantastic. And I mean, and it's got to be the collaborators, though, right? At the end of the day, getting to work with both
yeah,
of those guys.
yes, yeah, I think so. When you got a terrific script, a terrific penciler, and you finish with one of the best colorists in the business, it all comes together so nicely.
Now, Brian, he's embarking on a whole new publishing venture as well. So he's got a lot of work
Right.
to get done, to get that
Yeah.
finished, so that he can really focus more full time, I guess, on whatever the what is it, Ghost? I can't remember what the name of it now is. Ghost Machine, maybe, I can't recall, but
Okay.
sounded interesting.
Yeah, he's a dynamo. I don't I don't know how they can even contain that guy, because he's a great idea guy. Gosh, and then he's composing music on the side and everything. He's amazing. I don't know how he does all that he does, and does it so well.
Well, that's very true. Chuck Arnold mentioned, he says, I don't remember if it was Wade or Hitch, but one of them said on a podcast that that first issue was published ahead of schedule, which maybe kind of set things in, to put it on the wrong foot, right? You didn't
Yeah,
step out of
and
the gate right.
yeah, we can't figure out why they did that. I don't know if they even had a reason, other than it's better to put books out in the summer than any other time of the year, I guess. But
Right.
we had barely even started on the second issue, and the first issue took quite a while to finish. So there was no question, once they decided to put out that first issue, that the second one was going to be delayed. But that was the decision they made. So
Hmm.
whatever, you know.
That's not for you guys to decide, but
No,
it,
no,
it it probably leaves the fans wanting a bit more and wondering when they're going to get to the end of the story. But
yeah, and they will, and it'll be worth it, and they'll forget about this long delay once they read the entire story. I'm sure, because it's going to be very good.
so in your work with Brian on that book, I mean, are you getting the pencil pages, FedEx to you? So you're not working off blue
Right,
lines or anything like that? Great.
right, yeah. Actual pencils, a big stack. He's also very smart in the way he does his double page spreads are on one giant piece of paper. So yeah, these are some large packages uh, sailing over from England. Um, but yeah, yeah, because the format is larger.
Right.
They're larger boards to start with as well. So they're
Well,
it's quite a
interesting. You don't have
number.
any of them laying around in there that you can show us. You probably can't show us them because the pages
Um,
haven't come out yet.
yeah,
I should have
here
asked you that
I'll
before the
show you.
show.
Well, this is a Xerox since I have it right here, and so you probably won't see it very well. It's a beautiful double page spread um,
Oh, wow.
with a flying Superman and a collage of she's got the Guardians and Adam Strange and what else we got? Yeah, that's I don't know. It's so beautifully designed. I love the way he renders things. Um, a lot of times with a penciler inker pairing feels like a tug of war sometimes. The penciler is trying to go in this direction and the inker is trying to pull it in another direction because there's just not that much overlap in the styles. I never really feel that way with Brian's work. It's like,
Hmm.
oh yeah, I get that. I understand what he's doing with the lighting and the shadows and the rendering and stuff like that. It's a very natural fit. So
That's good. I
couldn't
mean,
be
there
happier.
it sounds like your collaborations with Brian, you just have a very harmonious approach to things, probably, sensibilities. Do you have that relationship with other pencilers that you've worked with in the past?
Um, yes, but there's always a little bit of that tug of war I was referring to, just because we all see things in a different way. Um, and yeah, I'm enjoying this project, but I'm also there's a limit to my resolve with inking because if I spend a full week doing nothing but inking, uh, I, I'm so I don't know creatively frustrated or something, Fred. Um, wisdom, yeah, it's more sarcasm from Fred Chamberlain. Um, uh,
Which I think you'll probably be getting a lot of at OAX since you'll be sitting next to one another, but
yes,
we'll talk
I'm
about that in a little.
looking forward to it. Anyway, it's just I never set out to be an inker. It's a strange job where you're taking
Yeah.
someone else's drawings and finishing them. It's by nature an odd way of doing artwork because the poor penciler feels like, no, that's not really what I meant. You took that in a different direction. Um, and the ideal situation is one like this where Brian is covering all of the bases so beautifully. The stuff is really well structured. I understand the lighting. Uh, I agree with all of his choices, etc. And I hope that he feels the same way about what I'm doing. Um, but generally, it's this weird dynamic where one guy, the penciler woman guy, sees it one way, and then the inker interprets it in a different way. And when it works, which I think is rare, um, it, it's beautiful. Um, I argue with art collector friends of mine about this because I honestly think that I can think of few combinations where an inker comes in and inks someone's pencils where the penciler himself could not have done a better job. Usually a good inker is a really good draftsman. You can learn technique and find the best, most expensive tools in the world. If you can't handle the basics of drawing, you're really not going to be a good inker.
Now you've said inker a few times, but yeah, I think you've always considered yourself more of a finisher, somebody who has that gift of being able to really,
I actually I don't, but there have been a few jobs like Superman Aliens where people credit me with inking, but that was actually considered finishes over layouts. Dan Jurgens does these very tight layouts, but there's not a lot of rendering. He's usually not putting a lot of light, and shadows on there. It's very much old school. Gil Kane and John Buscema and a lot of those guys, that's the way they worked when they were putting out a lot of pages. They considered that the inker's job, that, you're the figuring out light sources and the shadows. They considered that the inker's responsibility. So yeah, in that regard, it's finishing more than inking, but there've been so many different jobs that are finished to a different degree before I get to work on them.
Right. Well, they're all going to be different. I mean, there was I was trying to read through here. What was it? Where's it going? That everyone can't do both things, penciling and inking, and that and then Avi here was the comment I was looking for. Avi mentioned that I doubt that there's a single working artist that doesn't welcome you embellishing over their work, and that and maybe there's a few. There's bound to be some, but at the end of the day,
yeah, sure. Because sometimes when you're inking and you think, I don't know how to. A lot of times it's faces. Like there's lighting on this face and I can't figure it out. I'm not, certain things work in pencil that just don't work in ink. If I put this in as a hard black line, it's just not going to work. And a lot of times the easiest solution is to pick up the eraser and change it a bit. And
sure.
The problem is it's a slippery slope. You start doing that, it's like, then when do you stop? And there've been far too many times when I know I've gotten carried away, or there was a job where it was considered layouts, but the guy who did the layouts had never worked that way before, and we kind of went back and forth. He still didn't quite seem to understand what I needed. And I was ready to just give up, and finally decided, well, I'll do the best I can with what I got. I think it turned out fairly well. I felt bad for, in a lot of places, what he had penciled or what he had laid out just wasn't there anymore. But he hadn't really.
He didn't give you enough to work with at the end of the day.
No, he didn't. And specifically,
you want to feel proud of what you're inking as well.
Well,
at the end of the day,
and you need even for layouts, you need. He had done some backgrounds, Gotham City backgrounds. He had done them, but it was like side of the pencil stuff. It was like, okay, here's some buildings, but it was just sort of this loose side of the pencil, blunt gray areas. There was nothing that I could really finish. I had to just draw the buildings from scratch, and there were other problems. But yeah, sure. I'm sure he's to this day very unhappy with the way it evolved. But it was a situation where the other option was to just not do it, just send it back to the publisher.
Right, because you're not going to do a subpar job on something like that. No, I'm sure you did exactly what needed to be done. There was. A couple of people mentioned that the Superman versus Aliens book, and Sheldon mentioned that David Finch on his channel, which has, I think 100,000 subscribers on that thing, said it was a great book to study lighting and shadows. That's a pretty good compliment.
Yeah, that is, and that as as much as I felt like I did too much um, reworking
Hmm.
of Dan Jurgens' layouts, because it was Superman Aliens, I felt like, okay, this is a Superman story that really should be very dark. That, a Superman story compared to a Batman story always looks, there's generally, you think of daylight with
Hmm.
Superman. Metropolis is, you think of the city of Metropolis, it's daylight. Gotham City is nighttime. But I felt like for an alien story, it's just going to look ridiculous if there isn't, if if you don't take a noir approach to this. And again, they were Mike Carlin was the editor, and he and Dan were very, very generous about allowing me to do what I felt like I should do on that artwork. So yeah, I'm glad people like the way it turned out, but it
Hmm.
was sort of an odd combination. So.
Well, and Dan is another creator that's going to be at OAX too.
Oh,
Should,
cool.
is it
Yeah,
okay to put him near you, or should he be hit on the other side?
absolutely. Oh no, Dan's a sweetheart. The last thing we did together was a short Batman story, and again, every time every time I go to work on his pencils or his layouts or whatever, I, I end up doing far more than I should, and I apologize to him. And I loved his response last time. He said, "It's okay, Kevin. I understand your process." I think he's he knows better than I do what to expect when I start to work on that stuff. But yeah, his layouts are very, very strong. He's an excellent storyteller, and when we've worked together, I'm very appreciative of his generosity, allowing me to do what I feel like I need to do to
Hmm.
take it sometimes a bit of a different direction.
Well, as he has such a background in writing as well as illustrating. I mean, he knows what a good story needs. You know,
Yeah,
and
he
I think
does.
that that makes him wise beyond his years as far as
Yeah,
whom he collaborates with and what he should and shouldn't expect from those collaborators. So that's cool. I've had a
yeah,
couple good conversations with Dan myself, and he just seems very down to earth, and I like his kind of philosophy on comics and just wanting to tell good stories. You can tell that that's what's in his blood, and it's clearly
yeah.
the same position that you have in the work that you're doing too. You want to tell great stories, and it's what this whole thing's all about.
Yeah, but the difference is Dan's got this stuff figured out, and I still haven't. I mean, yeah, yeah. I've only had a few conversations with him, but yeah, he has an understanding of this business that I couldn't even aspire to. And I mean that specifically the business part of the business. He's really got a handle on to a remarkable degree. Um, but yeah, he's
So
he's terrific.
I saw Avi also mentioned that you remember hearing that Chris Prouse was disappointed that there wasn't enough Nolanization of his work on Wildcats Alien collaboration.
Well, that's the other side of this coin, because there have been a few times when not only is there not a tug of war, um, I feel like, oh, this is a it's maybe a different style, but I can adjust to this style and just ink it the way it's penciled. Um, no situation was more ridiculous than Mike Mignola. Just before he started Hellboy all those years ago, we did an Aliens book at Dark Horse, and Mike had seen me inking other people and seen how I had gone to town and added all this stuff and redrawn things and all that. He said, "Oh,
Mhm.
I want Kevin to ink this, and I want to see him do that to my pencils." We'd done a bunch of covers and things together at Marvel, but um, his work had matured at that point. Again, it's just before he started Hellboy, so this was Mike reaching at an early age the peak of his powers. I mean, he's terrific now, but that's when you realize, oh my God, this guy is amazing. Um, and so I did everything I could to ink those lines as faithfully as possible and try to get the feeling that I saw in his inks, because I,
Mhm.
I thought the shadows and pared down rendering worked so effectively. And he got mad.
I was going to say,
I hear from a third party that he was mad because he really wanted to see me, as other people said, Nolanize it. And it's like, that's crazy. The pencils were perfect. And his response was, well, okay, I guess I have to accept that. It's like, yeah, this is your burden in life, is you don't get the joy of having someone take over and transform your pencils because you draw too well. Who would want to? Oh, Clayface. No, he might have had that complaint about the Clayface, but Clayface was actually much later, and I'll tell that story because it was a secret origin of Clayface. Mike penciled that many years ago. Again, before the aliens thing, so he actually drew it years earlier, and it was written by Steve Purcell, who did Sam and Max, that very funny comic, and it was one of the funniest stories I'd ever read because he took the old Golden Age dialogue from these old Batman comics and pretty much just reused it, but it sounds ridiculous now. And the story was hilarious. Well, Danny O'Neill was the Batman editor at the time, and he said, no, we're not going to publish a comic where a bad guy calls Batman and Robin a couple of costumed pansies. We're just not going to publish that. I thought it was hilarious. So it sat on the shelf for a long time. I think actually it got the pencils. Some editor passed the uninked pencils off to a guy in Canada who was supposed to use them for inking samples.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if that actually was what happened, but anyway, so the pencils were lost or out of DC's hands for many years, and then fast forward, I don't know how many, let's say a decade or so later, Mike was going to do some work at DC and asked about that story. By then, Danny had moved on. There were other editors involved who were a little more lenient, and sure enough, they managed to track down those pencils. And Mike called me up. Originally, I was supposed to ink this story. He said, "Would you mind if I ink these myself?" And no, of course, you don't need to ask me. It's not like I laid claim to this. He was going to ink it himself. But then he called up a little later and he said, "I think I'm going to ask you to ink it again because I looked at these pencils and I don't even know the guy who penciled these pages." So many years had passed. His style had evolved so much. But he said, "Please go to town on this." And I did in a few places, but probably not enough. Where they were a little less finished. I thought, look here, I'll rework this in my style. And
that's funny. He felt you could get back into his headspace from 10 years previous, whereas he just couldn't make it work for him. So
yeah,
that's funny. But you worked, but you did a good job. Yeah, it worked out. I mean, that's the thing.
I hope so. I was just happy to see that story published because it was literally one of the funniest things I'd ever read in comics. It was hilarious. So.
Well, we got I had a super chat here from Daniel Earls where he said, "Kevin, your Monsters in the Closet is my favorite Batman story of all time. Thank you for all the inspiration and motivation over the years." Well,
thank you, Daniel. Daniel posted some amazing Batman pages online the other day that he said were inspired by that story, but my goodness, he went way beyond anything I have ever done. He's a terrific artist. I wish I could draw like him. So I appreciate him saying that, but I feel a little unworthy of his compliment.
Well, thank you for that, Daniel. And Ilya has a similar question related at least to Batman. How was it inking those Quesada Batman covers that came out earlier in this year, right?
Yeah, it was it was it was the first time we'd worked together in quite a while. We did sort of Osrail like 25 years ago or more. When he was just sort of coming into he was just sort of developing his style at that point. It was one of the first real mature Casada jobs where but his style has changed quite a bit since then. It's a little more photorealistic. They're extremely tight pencils now, where I really do feel like I am just tracing lines for the most part. I take it back. There was one that had a bunch of cats on it, and I did a little bit of work on some of the cats. There was a combination Catwoman Batman cover. It was maybe two covers that were actually drawn as one large piece of artwork and then split up into two different covers on two different books. But again, he's working a larger format, extremely tight pencils, a lot of shadows. There's one that's like just a small amount of white on there. So yeah, they're a blast, but I don't feel like I'm contributing a whole lot because everything has worked out so to such a finished degree on the pencils.
So when you're working on it, you kind of mentioned that a lot where when you're not contributing the Nolanization to some of the artwork, whether it's Hitch or the Casada covers. I mean, do you take a break from the work and do a few personal pieces to just kind of get yourself back into your own headspace?
Yeah, I feel like I have to. I mean, it's a weird impulse. You've been working hard all week, but all you've been doing is inking someone else's pencils, and then the desire to just pick up a blank sheet of paper and start drawing is almost overwhelming. It's like that's often becomes part of my weekend. It's just recharging my batteries by actually drawing again, as opposed to just inking. When you're doing your own stuff, which is really for me, the ideal way to work is to pencil, ink, letter, and color my own work. Then you get tired of one job, it's time to move on to another, even though it's the same project, you're working on a different stage. And that's the ideal situation. But if you're doing only one of those, and I even tried being a full-time letterer for a while back in the 80s, because it seemed to be the job I enjoyed the most. It was the least frustrating, and it was maddening because doing nothing but lettering and not drawing all day was
That's got to be worse. I mean, I can't say that I've ever seen any Kevin Nowlan lettering credits on books. Maybe I've just not been reading the right stuff.
Oh, not for a very long time. I did letter that Hulk story that I did for Marvel a couple years ago. I did a 10-page Hulk story that I've crowed about quite a bit since then, because it was one where all of the accidents were happy accidents that worked in my favor, as opposed to what usually happens when all the accidents work against you. This one, it's a whole series of coincidences made it one of my favorite jobs. But one of the first ones was the editor agreeing to let me do hand lettering on the boards at Marvel, which they don't do anymore. And because it was just a backup story, they said, sure, we'll bend the rules a little bit. But I lettered 11 or 12 issues of Moon Shadow. I lettered the last issue of ROM, Space Knight, that had artwork by Steve Ditko and Craig Russell. It's a beautiful comic. I did a bunch of logos. These were all for Carl Potts, who was an editor at Marvel at the time, and ended up being a good friend, who was he was so agreeable. Whatever I wanted to do, whether it was inking somebody else or doing covers, or when I threw a curve at him and said, yeah, I think I just want to do lettering, he sent me a bunch of logos assignments, so I did a bunch of those for Marvel, and some.
Did you save those? I think people would love to see logo work that you did back in the 80s. I mean, I'm assuming that's around that.
Yeah, no. Usually, you would send in the original artwork for those because they were just, they were
You wouldn't get
drawn
them
with
back.
ink on paper. So yeah, you wouldn't. Yeah,
Well, it was,
I've
it's
got.
funny you're mentioning that because when I was looking at, the pieces that you sent in, the three that you did, and maybe it was done on the some of the stuff that you sent me the last time, but I noticed that you actually put in, the lines as if you were a letter. You kind of put where you were to sign your name. You even made sure that it was, it's square to the page. And I didn't notice that in any of the
Yeah,
first ones, but I saw that and I'm like, wow, Kevin is concerned about making sure that that there's a completeness to your piece. I think that's great because I handle a lot of artwork and I've never seen that before, and I was like, that's pretty awesome. But now the lettering background is something that kind of
yeah,
speaks to that.
yeah. And that's slightly embarrassing though. Guidelines for your signature, but when I do sign without the
No,
guidelines, it just doesn't look right. I either don't make a straight line with the signature, or it it just doesn't look right to me.
well, I'll tell
So
you, Kevin,
yeah,
now that I've pointed it out, I can't erase them before I send them out because
no,
people
you
are going to look
can.
at it and say,
Well,
where's those
yeah,
lines at?
I just like the way that looks with the
Yeah.
signature ink with the guidelines in pencil. It just looks right to me that way. Um, I was going to say something. Oh, lettering. Yeah, some of my favorite comic artists did their own lettering. The best example is Alex Toth. The
Oh,
stories that
yeah.
he did, where he lettered them himself. I think those are my favorites. There's very few where another letterer did the lettering that look as good to me as like that two-part Black Canary story that he did in Adventure Comics. It's
Oh,
just
yeah.
stunningly beautiful, and that's not just his lettering. That's his logo, the Black Canary design work for that. It's just makes it so distinctive. But I like starting with the lettering when I lay out a page because if I have a script where all the dialogue and everything is established and isn't likely to change, then I start laying that out, and then I know exactly how much space is left for the drawings. You're not guessing and guessing wrong because we've all seen examples where word balloons cover up faces and things like that. But if you start with the lettering, then that never happens because you can work with the space that's left after the lettering is done.
Jeff Parker mentioned that your lettering is his favorite, and I like that he does the roundish balloons too.
Roundish
Then-
balloons. Yeah, thanks. Um, yeah, I feel like it's sort of a no, almost no one does hand lettering anymore. It's all done digitally. You can understand why they like it that way because you can change dialogue up until the last minute. You don't have to put white out on an original artboard. But when you look at these originals now with no balloons, it looks like something's missing. You can't read the pages like we used to in the old days. You could collect comic artwork and actually read the pages. Now you can, the artwork is unobscured by balloons, but it's artwork. It's not really a story anymore. It's
exactly. I
when
have
the
a few
lettering's
collector.
done.
I have a few collector friends who actually print their own stats, effectively, acetate overlays, so that they can
Yeah,
enjoy this story as it was meant to be appreciated, with the word
yeah,
balloons on it.
yeah. That's smart. I like that. Yeah.
So let's see. I know there were a couple other questions I missed, but Avi had made a super chat. Is there a character that you haven't had a chance to do significant work on, or that you're eager to tackle, or maybe get back to? Somebody, a character that you haven't that you've actually done some work with, but there's more to be done. There's more Nolanization to happen on that character before you can close the book on him.
Um, I don't think so, because I've actually had at least of all of my favorite characters. I used to always say that at Marvel it was Doctor Strange and the Vision, and I've drawn both of those. Over at DC, I guess it would have been Green Lantern, Hal Jordan. I did, I don't know, 25 variant covers one year for that. So I felt like I got plenty of opportunity to draw that character as much as I'd ever want to.
Hmm.
And the usual Superman and Batman things and all of those. Um, and the reality is nowadays, if you just sit down, you feel like drawing um, Captain America, pick up a piece of paper and a pencil and draw Captain America. Um, and it's different from doing it for publication because then nobody's telling you, no, you got to do this, you got to change that. Just drawing for the fun of drawing is still something I enjoy. Um, you work for other people, following somebody else's script for so long, you eventually feel like you're I don't know. It gets old after a while in case you want to just draw for the joy of drawing for a change.
Well, I mean, that's good, but it also is telling, 40 years in the business, you've gotten to work with all the major characters that you wanted to. I mean, and that's, that's kind of interesting. I mean, probably going into the business, these are characters that you had hoped to work with. I mean, did you help steer your career into those titles like a Doctor Strange? I mean, isn't that kind of
No,
ironic that you just either your style suited the storytelling and the editors felt you were the right person. If you didn't ask, I mean, that's amazing that you've been able to kind of, get into those those stories and characters that you're most interested in.
it from the very beginning. Yeah, that's one of the great ironies that I've still have not gotten over. Is I'd never drawn a comic story before in my life. I'd done some sample pages and some layouts, but I'd never actually drawn anything um, in comics. Just some fan art, spot illustrations, and I'd done some layouts for a Roger Stern script after I'd made a trip up to Marvel, and they looked at my portfolio and said, "Yeah, it's all fine, but there's no continuity." So Roger, Tom DeFalco, the Spider-Man editor at the time, said, "Yeah, here, I'll give you a Roger Stern script. So I know you can't cheat because this hasn't been published yet. So do some layouts and uh, and show them to us, and we'll see what we can do." And that's all I had done. And then, I've told the story many times of Terry Austin just being a good guy. I didn't know him other than, I mean, he didn't know me. I knew his work, but he just out of the blue had seen some of my fan artwork in like the Comics Journal and Amazing Heroes, and he wrote me a note and said, um, if you'd like me to take in samples of your work to Marvel and DC and try to get you some work, I'd be happy to do it. And he did it. And next thing I know, I'm getting a phone call from Al Milgrom, who was the Doctor Strange editor, and he wanted me to do a fill-in issue. And
Yeah, that was
I was just,
issue 57, I think,
was
right?
it? Okay, I
Yeah,
can never remember issue numbers,
I'm pretty
but
sure it's
yeah,
57 because I remember I think we talked about that before. I remember that it was Terry Austin inks on an interior. I mean, this was the cover to 57. It's not in anybody's collection, but it is posted up on CAF. But I mean, for somebody just, your fan art must have been pretty accomplished to kind of jump into, uh, Doctor Strange and have this be you know, the output to get started. I would have to think Marvel was pretty excited after that first fill-in issue. Maybe not.
well, they kept giving me more work, but I
Yeah.
was so, it was, it was done under a deadline. I knew so little about drawing comics at that point. I was so green. Um, I always I always point out the first scene where it's just Doc in plain clothes and his girlfriend, and they're walking down the street, and it totally threw me because it's like, how do you draw people just walking down the street? I've never done that before. These are the
Mhm.
basics of drawing comics. Was a huge challenge for me because you do sample stuff, you do fight scenes or dramatic poses, you don't do the ordinary things, so you don't learn to you know give your characters very naturalistic movements and stuff like that. So just slowly walking down the street was a huge challenge for me. So that those are the kinds of things I was dealing with. That yeah, but back to the original point, the fact that the irony of they gave me my first shot with the character that I by far was my favorite of all the Marvel characters since like the mid '70s, early '70s. I've been reading the comics and really loved them. So just dumb luck, I guess.
Well, I mean, you seem pretty accomplished in this cover, being, having it be one of your first. And I looked at the interiors, I know, the last time, and again, I mean, granted, Terry was doing inking on them, but still, you had it all down. It's
Oh, I did.
impressive
You can look at
cover.
the, and I got to ink that cover again. Who knows why they had that much faith in me? Because
Yeah.
my first cover, and they let me pencil and ink it. But you can see I did not know how to do drapery. Working really hard on Doc's cape there, but the folds of fabric are a total mystery at that point. I hadn't. I could fix that so easily right now. I could redraw it and do a much better job. But I don't know. Sometimes I think I think people look at comic art and they like to see a little that amateur struggle. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
The whole cliche about, well, your old work was better. I I think sometimes we're charmed by the the naive mistakes that young artists make, and have a lack of appreciation of the veterans where they figured out a lot more stuff, and then I don't know. To the eyes of some people, it gets boring. It's like they want to see those struggles, I guess.
Yeah, well,
So
there's
we
nothing
look
wrong
at
with that. I think at the end of the day, when it's we've talked to so many different creators on the channel, and in Marvel and DC, started many careers. I mean, you got to start somewhere, and the idea that like you just said, like to see you struggle. I mean, in a way, that's kind of their sink or swim, right? They're going to throw you in and just see what you can do, whether or not you rebound, whether your ego can handle it, any of the criticisms that may come out of it, and I don't know. That's part of your trial by fire as a creator. And I just highlighted this one because I saw somebody, where was it? Asian American Advice said cover of Defenders 127, one of my favorite covers of all time. But that's cool. At the end of the day, you've
that's
worked in
not
the business.
me.
Oh, that.
No,
Oh,
I don't know. I
highlighting
don't know
all
who
the
that
wrong
is,
stuff.
but it's a nice cover. But that's not me. I don't know who did that.
All right.
Sorry.
I'm highlighting around
Sorry.
here. But
It's all
what
right.
I'm going back to that point though is that
Uh-huh.
they seem to do that with a lot of people, right? I mean, as far as like just they think your work is good enough, they give you a backup fill-in story, and then the next thing you're in a you're thrown into it, right? You've got to figure it
Right.
out, and I think there's not many creators from the 70s and 80s, I think, that don't have a very, a different story like that. I mean, some of them were more successful than others getting that break, um, but yeah, I mean, yours is just interesting because you had done work in fanzines and a few other avenues. So enough that Terry Austin saw it, right, at the end of the
Right.
day. So that's,
Right.
I think that's unique in any of the people's stories that I've heard.
Yeah. And it's a testament to what a sweetheart Terry is, that there was really nothing in it for him. He was just being a nice guy. Just,
Right, 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 right.
reached out, and yeah, I've always been impressed by that he just
Yeah,
took the time to help me out.
sure. So I saw a question earlier from Travis Elzors, and he mentioned he just posted something that reminded me of that. What was that? He asked if you'd ever done any work with Sienkiewicz in the past.
Bill inked a few pages that I had penciled for Moon Knight.
Hmm.
As you expect, they were really nice. Yeah, Bill's one of the most amazing artists ever in comics. I continue to be in awe of him. But that was a huge problem for me. That was the first gig they gave me. Like, I think really the only regular assignment I ever had in comics, and I quickly
Hmm.
learned that it was bi-monthly, I believe. But even that schedule was impossible for me to. I could never get far enough ahead on the schedule so that I could do my own inks. So all of those stories were inked by other people. Um, usually at the last minute, because I kept saying I was going to try to get done soon enough so I could do my own inks. They said, yes, we'd be happy to for you to do your own inks, but you got to get the pencils done. And I wouldn't. I'd be too slow. So they'd bring in a big, whatever inkers wandered through the office then would be inking a few pages. But yeah, Bill inked a few Moon Knight pages, and I think other than that, no, we haven't worked together on anything. But there's no reason to. I mean, Bill certainly doesn't need any help. There's far fewer pencil inker combinations than there used to be. It used to be the standard thing, when we had just regular monthly newsprint comics. That was the thing. John Buscema or John Byrne would be penciling, 2, 3, 4 books a month, and each one would be inked by a different inker. And that's not as common as it used to be. Now, more people finish their own work, or it's penciled and then scanned and digitally inked, or whatever you want to call it. You don't, we have better printing now. We don't have to ink everything. You can reproduce from pencils or work digitally or whatever, and it's less necessary than it used to be. But
right. Well, I was talking with Josh Casera a week or two ago, and he kind of puts his own finishes on things and does ink washes and whatnot, and he just offered up that I like working this way because I hope that at some point maybe my stuff will be compiled in an all black and white ish printing, whether that's in a IDW book or whatnot, and the idea of having his work appear very finished in that black and white format was appealing to him. And there's other artists that I think work that style, or today, like a Nick Klein, who really puts in a lot of he puts in all the gradients within it. It's just a different approach, which is kind of cool. That's more like the Marvel magazines, right, of the 70s and early 80s, where those were printed in black and white, were finished in that way. We're seeing artists kind of gravitate to that style today.
Yeah. And it means the artist is doing much more of what traditionally would have been the colorist's job, because all of those light and dark values beyond the ink lines are determined by the original artist, not by the colorist. But it works. Yeah, I think that's a nice way of working when you're collaborating with a colorist, is to give them sort of a map of values as well, so that they're not just trying to create that out of nothing. Usually when I have a problem with a colorist, that's what it comes down to, is the light and dark. Like, they don't understand the lighting that I'm going for. That's why I'm so excited about David Barron's work on this the Superman Black Label series, because he literally every page he understood the lighting. He understood, no, this is should be the lightest area, and this is the shadow area, and he never messes that up. He hits it out of the park every time, and that's very rare, because when you're looking at a piece of artwork that has no gray, it's just black and white, it could be interpreted in so many different ways. And a lot of times you're just guessing what the original artist might have intended. So
now that I've corrected things, because I didn't even realize I had the thing on camera before, but this was the cover that Asian American Advice was talking about, and that one you definitely did do. And that's really, really cool. But it's funny. Do you remember when you see stuff like this? Do you remember kind of where you were at as a on your artistic journey, working at Marvel? I mean, were you very confident of yourself at kind of at this point in your career?
Not so much confident, but I remember quite a bit about that cover. Like most of those, again, Carl Potts was the editor, and he would provide me with a sketch. So that basic layout, with the positioning of the big heads, that came from Carl. then what's weird about it is I was trying to figure out a style of my own, and I kept looking at the work of an artist named Gary Kelly, who is not a comics artist. A very talented commercial artist in Iowa, and generally works in pastels, but he'd done some beautiful pen and ink pieces that I just fell in love with. And his kind of scratchy organic inking style was what I was going for on this and a few other pieces around that time. And I totally failed. I could never come anywhere close to what he had done.
Mm-hmm.
But this was my attempt at imitating his approach. Um, that's why the inking looks a little odd, a little overly scratchy, because I was failing, but trying very hard to go for a different style. I think what makes that work though is the dramatic shadows. Like the beast's face is half shadow,
Right.
an angel behind him, and so it adds to the mystery. And I don't think I did. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did not do the color guide for that. A little later, I would have been doing most of the color guide. So whoever colored it, they understood the light, except on the angel's wing is sort of backwards because they got the light source reversed. But it's generally pretty good. It adds even more drama to the piece. So yeah, I
Well, it's
like that one.
interesting that Carl gave you the rough. I mean, Carl's
Yeah,
a very important gentleman in many creators' careers, I think. I mean, beginning in the early '70s and onward. I mean, he just had a great sensibility in working with comics in general, but I think he was fantastic at identifying talent and nurturing it too. I mean, he helped a lot of creators really get their start, and
yeah.
I've never heard a bad thing said about Carl.
No, no. It makes sense that he would, because I think he's been teaching
Mhm.
for the last several years, and that makes sense because that was sort of his role even when he was at in editorial. He worked hard, just as Al Milgrom had before him, at bringing in young people and giving them their first chance at doing comics. Um, but I was actually telling him this recently. It's like, yeah, that's heroic. The unfortunate part is you get nothing out of that. You bring in all these new artists, they quickly go over to work for other people, and you're lucky if they remember to say thank you or something.
Mhm.
But that's what some editors were really good at doing back then. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had a chance.
Well, I saw a few other questions. Somebody asked, will there be art for sale? Yeah, I think in about 10 minutes, we'll probably start the art for sale side of things. We don't have a lot to show today, so it's not going to last long. We have 9 pieces, 3 of them new and 6 from the last show that we've repriced a little bit. So, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, Kevin's had a lot. You've been very busy on the current Hitch project and a few other things that are
Right.
going on, but you had that, and you started we did an OAX commission list that you had started at the last show that you've been working on as well. And I
Right.
got to see like a sketch and a piece that was close to being finished. And I can, we're not going to show any of that today to the 6 people who got on Kevin's list, but with the one character, you added a second character in there without, just because you wanted to do more. So those 11 by
Right.
14s, I think, are going to come out pretty spectacular, and anybody who was lucky enough to get on that list is going to be pretty thrilled with what they end up with.
Yeah, it's a good list. They picked some really good subject for those. And I think I was telling you that I met the guy who was getting that first one at a New Jersey show and showed him what I had done so far, and it was nice to get, because he'd given me some options there. It was
Hmm.
what I did, or an obscure Marvel character, and I was glad to get the positive reinforcement directly from him at that show, because it was a fun piece, which is, I think, going to be the case with all 6 of these. They should be You should
Well,
be
that one
fine.
in particular, I mean, and your scan that I got was kind of small, but I could see, I mean, it made me smile when I saw it. It's,
Good.
I can't wait
That's
to
the
see it.
idea. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Excellent.
And and speaking of OAX, like it's Kazra mentioned earlier, because Kazra was working with me on the show, and he had, it's funny, you and a few other artists are when we're kind of trying to figure out where do people want to sit, who do we put people with. I mean, your name comes up a lot, and people's just, I'd like to be near Kevin. And it was funny, you had given me a request about being near Jose Garcia Lopez, because your wife gets along with him so well, apparently.
No, she's got a big crush on Fred, Jose's friend, who usually
Oh,
comes
it's
with him.
Fred. Oh,
Yeah,
are you just saying that
Fred.
because Fred's
Yes.
in the audience
She
today, or
well,
is
she loves both of them because they're both charmers. But yes, her secret crush is on Fred. So I
oh
blame
boy, well, it's
him.
not secret anymore, Fred.
No. Oh no, he knows that. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Um,
funny. Well, no wonder he lobbied so sternly that he needed to get to the show too. Ah, now we know. But yeah, it's gonna be fun though. The show was kind of built around the idea that we wanted artists to be, and creators to have a set of creators around them that they want to meet or that they haven't seen in a while. And I think that this first year, I think we've done a pretty decent job. I mean, Dan Jurgens will be there too, and yeah, we'll make sure that it's not Kevin Nowlan's island, that we just put all the artists around there.
no,
We won't,
no.
but
Sorry, thank you for saying that, because the fact that you said a number of people want to sit near me. That's such a, that's the reverse of high school. It's what I
yes,
love about these conventions. It's like, okay, now these are the friends I've wanted to have my whole life. You get together with these people. I don't have to explain all this stuff to you. You guys understand. It's what I love so much about conventions these days, is you get to hang out with like-minded fellows who and it's not always fellows, men and women who uh, who understand each other so well. It's nice.
exactly. No, and that's but again, that's the legs and you know the momentum behind OAX that just seems to be so exciting. I can't, it's still, well, it's a little less than 3 months away, but I can't wait to see that dynamic. Everyone, really enjoying the company. Having 400 or 500 art collectors in a room with 50 or so artists that everybody really admires and appreciates and has collected in the past. Just the opportunity, I mean, just to have conversations amongst each other is going to be great. I think and the thing is, you figure all these collectors are going to have portfolios with them. You as an art collector too, I can't imagine that, that there isn't going to be a few collectors, that whose portfolios they share with you to show what they brought to the show. I mean, it's going to be exciting. I
Yeah,
cannot wait for it.
yeah, and it's funny because we were talking earlier about Phil Hester and others.
Mhm.
I think most of the artists I know are also, to one degree or another, collectors, because, um, well, for obvious reasons, but there's a lot of overlap there as well. Um, they love the artwork, they do the artwork, but they also want to see examples of other artists' work. Um, so yeah, it's fascinating to see what it doesn't always show up in someone's style. Like, I like a lot of artists who don't draw anything like me, or vice versa, and I think that's probably true of a guy like Phil Hester as well. As he's got a wide range of interests, and sometimes you can see a little bit of that in the work. It's a real education. The first time you see original artwork, it's like a light goes off over your head, because it's like, oh, this is how they do that. Just, I remember the first time I saw some original, I thought, oh, they're big. No wonder they could do such a good job. They're drawing these things big. I just assumed the comics were drawn the same size they were printed. Um, but then even seeing the originals and seeing technique, and one of the first things I saw was a Neil Adams cover for a mystery comic at DC. It had a big dog in the foreground with dry brush technique. But
Mhm.
oh, look at that! That's, you can only tell so much by looking at the printed work, but you can learn a lot by looking at the originals. So
Exactly. Well, I mean, Marvel tried that thing back in the day where they had some of the artists doing 2 interiors on a single page, so that because the page rate was still per page, not per drawn page or something like that. And so there was a time. It didn't last long.
Yeah.
I've always wanted one as a collector. I have always wanted to get one of those pages where it has the 2 pages drawn on. I mean, Darwin Cook did that with the Parker stuff too, later on. But to see a publisher trying to cut some corners, save a few dollars, and do something like that, I mean, that's just an interesting piece of comic art history and publishing history in a negative way, I guess, at the same time.
I had forgotten about that. I assume they stopped doing it because it was a little obvious. Like suddenly the quality of the work went way downhill because you were looking at it. It was, they were drawing it the same way, so the amount of detail was the same, but you were looking at it at a much larger size, so it just looked kind of. You see why people draw larger and reduce it down, because it cleans
Exactly.
everything up and looks so much more refined. Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
I mean, we had Adam Kubert on sometime around the same time we did the show with you, and he's working on bigger than twice up pages now because he can put more detail in them, and when they get reduced, I mean, it makes his artwork look even better. So yeah, that was a big mistake on Marvel's part to do that.
Yeah, they went the wrong direction.
Exactly.
Yeah. So was that the reason they were just trying to save a buck? Like if they paid for one page?
The way I forget where I read that, but that was something that's the story that I got.
Wow.
And I can't remember where I
it wouldn't even save them that much money. It would.
I know, exactly.
Wow.
But that's why I got to have one just as an art collector. I've seen a few.
Yeah.
There was a great. I can't remember who the artist was on it. It was from Man-Thing. It had Man-Thing fighting a bunch of alligators, but it was a DPS, and it was fantastic. But it was on 11 by 17, turned sideways. But it was from that era when they were doing them on separate pages. So, yeah, I gotta get one. I mean, because they just don't come up that often. I mean, I think I've only seen, that was probably the only one that I've seen from that era in the last 12 months. So, yeah, they're sought after, but probably not for the same reason I want one.
No, was the Man-Thing by Mike Plug?
I don't think it was Plug. I'm gonna have to dig if I go, because it was on Heritage, and I bid on. I put several bids on it. So if I go back on my history over there after the show, I'll find out. I don't think it was Plug, but yeah, now you got me wondering who the artist was on it. But I mean, it could have been, but I don't think it was. It's reminding me more of like no, I don't even want to guess. I'll find out and I'll let you know. But let's see. Yannick says
the size of originals is a fascinating thing, because I'm thinking back on how seeing European originals, they would pretty consistently work at a larger size. And I'm trying to think of the one artist who brought in some pages to a French publisher, and Mark Schultz and I were marveling at, it's like these giant poster size originals, but that's the way he worked. Very, very loose, but when it's reduced way down to print size, it tightened up like it looked like Stan Drake or something. I'll think of it in a minute, but it was that's just where he felt comfortable. But I swear these things were like 20 by 30 or something. They were huge posters. Every page was just enormous. So yeah, he was ahead of his time, obviously, because as you were saying, that's the way a lot of people like to work now, just because it just makes a sharper image. It just looks better, and it's a lot easier as you get older. It's a lot easier to put in those tiny little details at that scale rather than the smaller scale.
I found it here. I'll show the screen. Yeah,
wow.
Sorry, I'm trying to multitask here.
No, good for you.
Yeah, Jack Abel, Man-Thing, number 3. So there's your DPS, and I think and it's funny. I think I might have heard that from Rich Cirillo, because Rich mentioned in the chat. He said Sal Buscema told me years ago that Marvel only paid him for 1 page on a sideways 2-pager. So there you go. That's straight from Sal then, that they were only paid for 1. And so even though this isn't like, I mean, ideally I'd want 2 separate pages. But when I saw this one, I mean, I'm a horror buff anyway, so I saw this one, like, I've never owned anything from this era. I'd take this one, but it went for $4,800. I mean,
Oh,
to
wow.
talk about the comic
Wow.
art market here, I'm thinking like that. Oh, this will be maybe $1,500, and I'll be good with that. So there was
Oh
no
my
chance
God.
on earth that I was going to get this piece. But who would have thought? Man Thing and some alligators would fetch that kind of price on a DPS done on a single board. I don't think it should be half that. But hey, somebody else admired it as much as I did. If I had
Yeah.
$4,800, I would have spent it too.
Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, and then you look at
And
the detail.
but the rates, gosh, the rates were so low back then. They couldn't have been saving more than
I,
$100 or so. It's just like,
I
what?
know, it's
What were they
crazy.
thinking? Yeah. Oh, whatever. It was obviously a failed experiment, but that is a great piece, though. That's
I kind of wanted to see it because the way you mentioned about, were they able to get the same amount of detail in a page that's at the end of the day half size? And sure, they did, but I bet you the artist probably didn't like working that fine. I mean,
no,
it's hard to be
no,
loose and really to get your own aesthetic into the line work if you're
yeah,
really having to work at that scale.
yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, uh, I'm thinking of Alex Toth again because
Hmm.
Toth, the last few comic stories he did, he drew print size
Okay.
and even the lettering, and he worked with markers. But because of his approach, where he was, he loved to reduce everything down to
Hmm.
the essentials and simplify. It worked beautifully. I love the way those things turned out because especially at that stage in his career, it was not about fine detail. It was about um, the larger shapes, the
Sure.
impact of these big fat lines, and you get even fatter lines if you drew it at print size instead of larger. So it worked for him. It worked really well.
Hmm. I saw Yannick mentioned in the chat that they do their covers at 13 by 20 now,
13 by
just for
20 for
comfort.
comfort. Excellent. Okay. Well, that's amazing. I wonder how many other people are working that way. Now, like I said, some of the things I've gotten, the Joe Quesada pieces are larger, and these Hitch pages as well. But with Hitch, it's because the final print size is so much larger than a standard comic. But
Hmm.
yeah, there's no, as long as your scanner can accommodate, or if you can,
Right. I mean,
uh,
we had Bill Sienkiewicz on, in the spring last year too, and he's working. I forget what book he was working on, but he's drawing almost like the individual panels on 11 by 17, and then bringing it
wow.
all together digitally, kind of like that Howard Chaykin model of just doing everything separately and digitally recreating it. But one
Yeah.
of the things he said was that he can get that. He'd just be more aggressive with the page, while he's doing the artwork. He can get those lines in the way he wants. It feels like it just feels more natural to him. And now that he can
Mhm.
reassemble it digitally afterwards, I mean, it does for we as art collectors now. It's like if you want to own a page of art from Bill Sienkiewicz, you need like 3 or 4 or 5 pages, at least for whatever title he was doing that in, to make up that
Right.
one page. Uh, but he's getting the effect that he wants out of it. And at the end of the day, that's
Right.
really what's most important. I think, for the artist, you want to be doing your best work. And if that's the way you're going to work to get that to that level, then I don't think we as, fans of comics or fans of the artist are going to complain about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So there were lots of other questions in there, but some of those will just have to be answered at OAX if you're coming to the show.
Okay.
And then I'm sure we'll have Kevin on, in the future, in the next spring or something like that. But we do have art to show off to sell, so we should probably move over to that segment of things. And I know we have a lot of new faces in the audience too. So if you're not familiar with our channel, I encourage everybody to subscribe to it because we tend to do at least a interview and sales show every Saturday. We try, and we do a lot of collector, creator, seller interviews throughout the week. So it's a fun channel if you've not been on it before. So with that in mind, I'll go over just the ground rules on the sale today. We've got a couple slides to look at that just talk the basics. I do have all the art in hand. We've got 9 pieces of art to look at today. So claims happen in the chat. So what we do is we'll show you a slide, and that slide will have a lot number. They're ordered 1 to 9, so very simple. You just type claim and the lot number in the chat, and the first person who does that gets to claim the artwork. We at the end of the show, if you've claimed any artwork, you're going to shoot me an email, bill@comicartfans.com. You're going to let me know which lot you claimed. Of course, I'm taking notes here, but state it in your email, and also it's always best to put your mailing address in that email to me as well. And if you're already settled on your payment method, that's helpful too, because then I know whether or not I need to send you an invoice or get you other payment information, because we do want to get payment within 48 hours. There's a couple pieces where we might accept time payments over a couple months, but and so we can be a little flexible on them. But either way, typically 48 hours is what we're looking for. If you use Zelle or Venmo or even personal check, there's no fee involved with it, whatever. And with a check, I like you to have it in the mail to me on Monday, so we have it before, say, next Thursday, Friday. But if we do have to go the PayPal route, I do charge 4% as a service fee on U.S. charges and 5.5% on international charges. Then the prices don't include shipping and handling. Domestic shipping is $30, international shipping $65. Fulfillment, again, handled all by me. I ship everything in Masonite, as does Kevin. I unboxed your the package you sent on Thursday, and I made a note that I think you're one of the few artists that I work with that also ships in Masonite. It's just a safer method. I mean, hey, the post office can still break it, but they have to work really, really, really hard to do that. So we take great care in making sure that the artwork arrives safe and intact, and everything's bagged in case it gets left out in the rain, as can happen. But we take pride in making sure that the art is packed really, really, really well. So there you have all that. Let's see here. I want to make sure that we don't have any other questions, and it doesn't look like we do. So what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and jump into this. We're going to show the 3 new pieces first, and then we'll show the 6 pieces from the prior show after that. And let's just go ahead and jump in and show lot number 1. Now remember, just before we even start, all right, one thing I always tell every person who's done one of these shows in the past: if you're on YouTube, and most of you are, there is a like button, or the word like. It's like right in the corner over here. Click that, because that will get you as close to real, or like live. I'm sorry, live. Got my YouTube stuff messed up. It's the word live. That will push you as far forward in the timeline as possible, so that you're as close to live as everyone else, and as close to live as we are. We're always going to be a few seconds ahead of you just because of the way things work with streaming. But this gets you into a competitive position with everybody else in the chat. Because the last thing we want we're on lot 2 and you're just seeing lot 1, and nobody likes that. So that's the best advice I can give everybody on that. Or just hit refresh if you're on a desktop computer on your browser. That'll pull you as close to live as possible too. So with that out of the way, and everybody having clicked the live link, then we can get this thing started. Corey says he always hits the like button. I should say that too. Hit the like button. Nick Barucci's reminding everybody that you should do that always when you're watching our shows too. Live and like, that's the way to go. So, all right, now we can get on with lot number 1 here. So first lot of the day is lot number 1. It's the Doctor Strange commission that I unboxed a couple days ago. It's on 9x12. It's priced at $650, and you can draw drapery here, Kevin. Unlike the criticism of that cover of yours a little bit ago, the drapery on this one looks pretty good.
It's certainly better. I've done a lot of Doctor Strange convention sketches, and a few years ago did a lot of covers for them again, and some backup stories as well. And I still always enjoy drawing the character, and I think it's because, as we were talking about earlier, Doctor Strange was my first professional job, and I felt like I'd fallen flat on my face. And I think every time I do one of these, I'm looking for redemption. Like, okay, I really can draw this guy right, and I've gotten closer and closer and closer, but I still feel like I'm searching for the ideal Doctor Strange drawing. You know, some of them look a little too much alike because, you know, him reaching out and gesturing, casting a spell with, you know, his cape flowing dramatically in the wind. That's the essence of the character in my mind. But it's again, it's a I'm still searching for that. I don't think I've ever felt like when somebody's asked me at a show to do another Doctor Strange drawing, I always react very positively. Okay, good. I get another shot at it. Maybe I'll get it right this time. Maybe I'll really nail this character. And I'll brag and say I've come very, very close. I like this one a lot. This is very much, yeah. I'm not gonna pick it apart the way I will that old cover from 1983 or something. But he's a
Well, it's
different
great that you
character.
still challenge yourself, Kevin. I mean, that, you know, that it still excites you. It's like, all right, I get another chance to see if I can't make that perfect, you know,
Yeah,
image of this character.
yeah, yeah. That'll be the time to quit when you start seeing each one getting, you know, worse than the one before. I honestly feel like that each one has gotten better. Every time I've drawn him, I feel like, okay, good. I got to remember that I did something right that time, and I'll try to remember that next time because he's a there's a very specific look to that guy. He's not your standard marble muscle bound guy. It's a different approach, and I do over the years. I feel like I keep getting closer and closer. So.
Well, I wanted to thank Mike Sitchy for claiming that one. You wanted it, and so did Rom 2814, aka Danny. I know his real name in the chat too. So thank you, Mike, and thank you, Rom, for trying to get that one. We got two other new pieces to show off here too. And one thing I wanted to mention when I was looking at it too, I love the way you're cross hatching. It's very distinctive, and you know many artists cross hatch. Your cross hatching, you know it when you see it. I mean, it's just distinctive, and the way you the line weight and the character of those lines. That's you know, that's cool. You can't say that about about everybody. You know, it could be done rather generically, but you take your background inking and shadows very you know, on, and you just make it your own. I love it.
Cool. Thanks.
So let's see here. Lot number 2 is next, and actually no lot. I skipped lot number 2, so I have lot number 3. We'll throw that lot number 2 next, I guess. So lot number 3, apologies, is this Batman piece on 9x12, priced at $650 as well. And you know, and I guess we could look at this one. It's that the crosshatch, the way you're handling this, the shading there, and where you choose to do that. I mean, you could have just had a straight black, you know, background there without adding any of the cross hatching to that dark shadow behind him, but you throw a little bit of that in there, and that's the Nolanization, I think, that people were talking about earlier, right?
Right, and like that cross hatching on the ground behind his legs there, to me that works because you know, pen and ink drawing is absolutes of, you know, solid black and solid white, but then the cross hatching is this funny little it's gray. You know, you squint your eyes, it reads as gray, but then when you unsquint your eyes, you see it's these line patterns
Mm-hmm.
that work in a certain way, and you can move those around a little bit and get different effects, or you know, create different um, whatever. It's it's eh, it gives it a little more dimension um, with that third value in there. Um,
Definitely.
and yeah, I've always been fascinated by the technique that artists use for pen and ink drawings, and what effects you can get. Actually, my favorite thing in this drawing is the cape because of the little ripples in there. For me, the idea is to suggest a kind of leathery feel, like an actual bat's wing,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to the lighter fabric that you'd see in a Superman cape. Um, you know, everyone has fun drawing Batman's cape. Um, I guess for those reasons, as well as just, you know, it's fun to, you know, he's to make it flowing, like it's make him look like a giant bat, the way the cape
Sure.
spreads out and all of that. Um, but it's also fun to just play with those black and white patterns and create some textures that suggest weight as well as
I think a few
adding some
people felt that the cape was the well inked part of this piece as well. So textures
good.
at their finest, says Rich Cirillo. So 3 is still out there. I'm going to switch back over now to 2. I didn't fail math, and this is math counting? I guess it could be in a certain way, Mr. Redjack, but I'll go over to 2 now since I skipped it. 2 is the Superman commission that I showed off the other night as well on 9x12 again. And this one's priced at $650 as well, just like the other 2. So with this one, I mean, even with, I assume with all characters, you're always going after trying to find that best pose, right? Or you're trying to get the characterization right.
Right, exactly. And as I was saying earlier, he's Superman's a character that's less. Um, you don't want to go as dark with Superman as you would with a Batman drawing.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see I was playing around with that cape and trying to give it a little depth, because it's just too easy to make Superman's cape just hang there like a red bath towel on his back. And I keep thinking, why is it we can have so much fun with Batman's cape, but it just usually doesn't work that way with Superman's cape. So I was trying to get a little more drama in his cape, but I don't know.
Well, Chuck Arnold says he loves the thick cape. Yeah, that's it
Okay,
does
yeah,
appear weighty, that's for sure.
yeah, thank you. That's a word I should have used. It's weight. That's what I'm trying to get in there, because that's a hard thing to do in a drawing. I always talk about Jack Kirby drawing the Thing in the Fantastic Four, and how that Jack and very few other artists could make the Thing look like he weighed a ton. Other artists draw the Thing and he looks fine, but they don't convey that feeling of weight the way Jack Kirby could. And I always fascinated by that. Some of this is almost alchemy. It's like I don't know that there are tricks or rules to follow or anything. You just try your best to feel it when you're drawing it, and sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes it interesting, I guess.
Well, that's art, right? At the end of the day, there's a little bit of alchemy involved, I think, in that. I mean,
Yeah,
it's coming out
yeah,
of your brain down, through to your hand, and you don't know what you're going to end up with that. But no,
right. Yeah,
that's the fun part of it. That's why, isn't that at the end of the day, that's why people who can't make art are always amazed at the people who can, and they want to be able to, we all think we can draw. So it's probably a little bit of alchemy out of all of us, but some of you are better at it than others. So
yeah,
very,
yeah.
very cool. So those 2 are still available. World's Finest out there, lots 2 and 3. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the pieces that we had in the prior show that we've repriced a bit, and we'll take a look at lot 4 next. This was that DPS from Doctor Strange issue 20, the pages 11 and 12. So these are on. These boards are not taped together; they are separate, and they are priced at $400 for the DPS. I have let's see, I actually have a closer up view just to look at the all of the fun textures and stuff you had going in on this one. This is a little different. We were looking at leather and and shadow before, and now you're dealing with something that's a bit more textural in terms of grass and mass and whatever grotesque things that are happening in there. But your inking style just kind of fits perfectly with this one.
Yeah, those weird textures are just a lot of fun. It's like drawing monsters in general. There are really no rules.
Mm-hmm.
Just go in there and start to play with those shadows and textures and have fun with it. That's
Yeah,
what's
you
fun
got
with all. It's what's fun with the background of Doctor Strange stuff is you got all these different worlds to
exactly.
to draw
Well,
where there are no rules. It's just whatever you can make up.
I see Rich mentioned a little bit of Vess in there as well, and West Coast Dave mentioned
Uh,
some rights and energy in that DPS. Yeah, I can't argue with
yeah,
either of those. Um, I,
yeah,
I believe Jonathan Wilson said lot 4, please. I'll take that as a claim. Yannick tried to. I mean, I guess Jonathan confirmed that that was a claim. I'm assuming yes, that it was. But typically,
okay,
we just like you to put the word claim, and then you could just write the number claim and the number 4, and then we got it. But yeah, this is it's a gorgeous piece. This is I've gotten to look at this for the last 6 months or so, Kevin, and yeah, it's a beauty. It really really is well done. And
cool.
again, it just shows, these are exercises in their own way, right? When you
Hmm.
have a background like this, you get to kind of experiment a bit and just see what you're capable of.
Right, right, yeah,
All right. Well, Jonathan Wilson
cool.
did pick that one up. Thank you so much, sir. We'll go ahead and take a look at lot number 5 next, and this is from that same issue. So this is
Hmm.
issue 20 from Doctor Strange, page 14 on 11 by 17, and Doctor Strange is in a little distress in this one, but just another fun piece. And again, you get a little bit of that same background work in the first, second, and last panel there, but uh, just good stuff. I mean, I really enjoy this. And uh, when you're working on something that's all your own, I mean, you have the freedom to kind of do whatever you want, right? I guess. I mean, how restrictive did you feel, in this project? Because I remember this was a book where it was kind of told in 2 parts, where it was sort of like 2 stories as part of the same book. Just an interesting approach to that.
Right. Um, yeah, and it's always a little concerning because you don't know what the other artist is doing. I mean, they'll do their best to send you images from the other artists, but that's not a big priority for editorial. They
Right.
pretty much expect you to just do it on your own. But yeah, sometimes you feel like you're working blind a bit and not knowing what the other guy is drawing. But it I think it came together fairly well on this one. Yeah.
I do agree. And Nick Brucci has claimed this one. So thank you, Nick. We sincerely appreciate that. We'll go ahead and just go to the last 4 lots here. We got lot 6. Now, this one, if I'm not mistaken, well, I remember, I think Nick actually owns the pencils on this one. This is a blue line piece on 11 by 17. This is from Invaders 1. It's the cover to that. I think it was maybe one of the alt covers to it. And it's Casada blue line pencils underneath this. So printed out on a board in blue line, and then Kevin has inked it. But just I think you and your style and Kevin's just do work really well. And I mean, I clearly, you've done a fair amount of work together over the years. That I mean, you still wouldn't be doing it together if everybody didn't also agree to that.
Well, and this one, I probably mentioned this last time. This one was funny because I essentially gave Joe 2 choices. Um, his pencils did not have all those shadows in there. So I inked, since I was working over blue lines, I inked the first one straight, pretty
Mm-hmm.
much the way he penciled it without the shadows. And then again, since I wasn't touching his original pencils, I was working over blue lines. I did a second one. I did this one and showed him what I would like to do with all of these, with the heavy shadows, and let him pick. And he obviously picked this version, which I of course agreed with. But because he's in water and facing down, the light source pretty much, well, it doesn't have to be, but you would assume the light source, the main light source, would be above him,
Mm-hmm.
basically pointing at his back. So I just, no matter what I did, I couldn't see it any other way than with those very, very heavy shadows. And I think Richard Izanoff's coloring sort of verifies that. He like a good colorist does. He followed through on that light source behind and above him, and but again, I think I mentioned last time, the funny thing was I didn't even think about the the Neverwhere album cover until we were all done.
Mhm.
I go, oh,
It's
was that on?
hard to unsee it after that, right?
I guess so. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know why the color. I guess because you're seeing the, the added dimension of the water once you put the color in there.
Mhm.
But it makes a big difference. Suddenly, it looks much more like the album cover with the coloring on it.
It does, but I think that, he made the right choice in saying that was the way to go with it. So,
Cool.
I cannot argue with that at all. So, let's see here. So that was, where was it? One comment. Oh, you see, this is kind of like we were talking about. Everybody, curious about you and going to OAX. I mean, Nick Patera is going to be at OAX as well. And again, we don't usually have this many creators in a chat. So
Oh, cool.
you're a draw, Kevin. You're a draw.
Well, cool. No, I had fun visiting with Nick as well. He showed some amazing work on his creator-owned book that he was
Oh
doing.
yeah.
Just beautiful
Max
stuff.
Builder John is,
Yeah,
phenomenal. Absolutely
yeah,
beautiful work and
cool.
oversized. And again, back to
Yeah,
that, people working on larger size because it's just you can these days. Scanners are better,
yeah,
and printing is better, and yeah, it just makes so much sense.
yeah. Beautiful.
Let's see here. So we'll go ahead and take a look at Lot 7 next. That was the Green Lantern Corps cover from issue 20,
Hmm.
11 by 17, and yeah. And it's cool. You could see you're getting the energy and the arm and all that, and it's you adapt your ink style to what needs to be displayed. You've got some Kirby Crackle in there a little bit, just
Hmm.
enough to have it as a reference, and then switching over to the more metallic you know uh, shoulder and all that. I mean, it's just a cool piece, very very nicely done.
And it has nothing to do with the original artwork, but the other nice thing about this is that Mark Chiarello was the art director at the time, asked me to
Hmm.
do these covers and let me do my own coloring on all of them, because this is one where you really, Richard Easenoff on the last piece, a Submariner piece. He got it, but there's no guarantee that the colorist is going to understand what you're shooting for um, when they dive in and start doing the coloring. But you can see a lot of that energy comes from the coloring as well. Um, uh, but yeah, I do. I'm glad you noticed the Kirby um, energy. So I guess it's you can sort of call it Kirby dots. There's a few dots in there, but
Just enough. I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah.
We look at so much art. You whenever you see dots, you think Kirby. I don't know. It just
Hmm.
happens. But it's great. And Chiarello, I think, is also someone who has an affinity for original art too. I've heard that he has a few pieces in his collection that are pretty awesome. I've always thought about trying to chat with them about the hobby as well, but never had the opportunity yet to reach out.
Oh, that'd be great. I'd love to. Um, I, I I I know Mark fairly well, but usually when we would talk, it would be mostly business and
Hmm.
very little of the things like that. But I'd yeah, if he ever does that, I'd love to see it.
Well, if you're ever chatting with him, say there's this guy over on this Comic Art Live channel from CAF that would love to just talk. I mean, same with pots. I mean, there's people in the hobby that that are in the business that I would love to just get an hour or two with,
Oh
just
yeah.
to because of the stories and their time and the yeah. I mean, yeah, I haven't done enough of that. I mean, I love chatting with other collectors and creators and stuff, but just getting into the editorial. I've emailed with a few people, but I haven't been able to convince them to come on. But I think that just gives us an interesting perspective because they're so important in the whole process too. Whether they whether they feel it today or not. I mean, I think that they're a very huge guiding hand in things. And oh, Colin, my editor on CAF says he knows Mark and he can get me his email. Okay, Colin. Well then Kevin, you don't have to worry about it. Colin's gonna at least give me an email address. So yeah.
Excellent.
All right, well, we got two more pieces to look at here. This is one that I know Nick's familiar with too, because he was the publisher of this one. This is from Vampirella Year One. This was a variant cover to issue 4, done by Kevin. It's on 11 by 17. It is all pencil, and we actually had Linsner on the last week, and he had done a few of the Vampirella Year One covers as well. So you got to be involved with that too. So this one is priced at $3,000, lot number 8. Just fun. I mean, I know we had another Vampirella piece on the first show that I think was another one of Dynamite cover pieces, and so yeah, I mean, just fantastic. This is all you. I mean, this is no inks whatsoever. This is what it looks like before. I mean, do you typically when you're inking yourself, would you put this much detail into the piece?
For something like this, I probably would. Maybe not all of the rocks and stuff, but most of it. The cats definitely, because cats are a little tricky. You know, if you don't get a cat's face right, everybody knows it. You can see it a mile away. It's like, yeah, that's not. You know, they're not. Everybody, they might not be able to draw one, but everybody can tell you when you've drawn a cat correctly or not. We all. I may have mentioned last time that the cats were just so totally random. The editor said, I don't even know if I'd done a sketch at some point, but he just said, "Hey, can you throw in a cat?" It had nothing to do with the story or anything like that. He just said, "Yeah, why don't you throw a cat in there?" So I gave him 3. And I think he was very happy with that. So I do love it when comics are just so seat of the pants like that. Like, you know, just you're not following a script or rules or whatever. It's just totally random. That's always fun.
Yeah, well, I'd like to see, that would be a good question for Carl or Mark. How often have you asked the the creator to throw in something that was unexpected, and did they do it for you without asking questions? So here we go, lot 8, price to 3,000, still out there, and one more piece. This is this one, it's a great new X-Men cover from issue 19. It's on 11 by 17, and this one's priced at $4,500. And and great, just a great piece. And I'm an X-Men fan, so when I saw that, anytime you get to work on any of the X characters, I'm always happy to see how that turns out. But yeah, this one's very, very nice, and it's got Cyclops front and center on it. Kind of, he's my favorite X-Men character. Where does he rank for you, Kevin?
Yes, although this has the Beast, and I'm partial to the furry blue Beast.
All right.
Angel's great. If wings are a persistent challenge for me, I keep wanting to dig out my old Joe Kubert Hawkman comics to see how he drew wings, because you can copy a photograph of a bird's wing and it just doesn't work. It's all about the interpretation and structure and as we were discussing earlier, the feeling of it. And I know the Angel's way back in the background there, but yeah, when I get wings that work, I'm very happy with myself. When they don't quite come together, it really bugs me. But no, I like Cyclops a lot. That visor and the I-beams, that's always fun to draw. Did I mention last time speaking of random elements, I did not color this one. Whoever colored it stuck a feather on the lower left, the bald guy in the robot suit, just by his ear. If you compare the artwork to the print.
Oh yeah, I see that.
There's a feather, and the editor didn't know where that came from. I don't think the colorist ever fessed up. It's just like, well, okay, someone decided to add a feather to the piece,
and it doesn't look. That might have been editorial, Kevin. They just
the
said,
editor
Kevin's
swore he
already
didn't
done
do
with
it. No, the editor claimed that it was not at his direction.
So you even well, you'll have to have a talk with that colorist. I think.
some things are just meant to be mysteries. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, Avi said the feather is covering a pretty deftly drawn ear. So
Well, yeah, maybe the colorist was not happy with the way I'd drawn the ear, and he figured that was a way to avoid a problem, just cover it up.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh man. Well, listen, I want to thank Mike and Jonathan and Nick for picking up the lots that they did today. I'll go ahead and just show the 6 that are still available, and I know we're going to probably get a lot of views in the next 24 hours. So anybody that sees these lots that are still available, you can still reach out to me, bill@comicartfans.com, and if it's still available, we can work it out after the show. Always happy to do that. So let me go ahead and we'll go, and we're going to do lot 2 first, not 3. We're going to go to lot 2 before 3, and this is the Superman commission on 9x12, priced at $650, and then also lot 3 being the Batman commission on 9x12 at $650. Then lots 4 and 5 did sell. So then we'll just take a look at the 4 covers that we've got here. Lot 6 priced at $2,000. This was the Casada Blue Line piece, 11x17 from Invaders 1. Then we've got the Green Lantern Corps piece, all Kevin on this one, 11x17 as well, priced at $2,000. We have the all pencil piece, Vampirella Year 1, number 4 variant cover, priced at $3,000 on 11x17. And lastly, the one we're just looking at, the one that we're going to have to question this colorist about, the all new X-Men number 19 cover on 11x17, priced at $4,500. We got them all in.
Excellent.
Yes. So yeah, we're going to be chatting a bit in the next, few weeks, trying to get everything lined up for OAX and whatnot. And I'll tell you, once we figure out the seating plan, I'll be sure to let you know who we're putting around you, Kevin. So that's kind of the fun part of it now. Now we've actually got the layout of the floor all figured out, and now it's all about never having done a show at this level before. It is interesting that a lot of exhibitors and artists kind of have preferences. A couple exhibitors want to be next to one another. Maybe it's because they like to be able to spot each other when they need a bathroom break. I don't know. But a lot of requests come in about placement in exhibit halls that I would never have guessed actually goes on. But yeah, it's just it's going to be fun. Definitely going to be an enjoyable time.
We always like to sit as close to Howard Chaykin as possible, because then we're entertained by show tunes at random moments through the day. So
that
he
does like to sing.
Yes, he does. He does. He with little encouragement, he will break into song.
Yeah, he's not coming this year, but he's definitely somebody who I wouldn't. We've had him on the show a lot, but I enjoy getting to hang out with him. He's always he's going to be on in 2 weeks. Well, no, it's got to be more like 4 weeks. I've got him in the early December, but yeah, he's always a pleasure to hang out with. He doesn't always sing though. But listen, Kevin, fun as always. I'm glad that you were able to do this with me today. I know that you're on the mend and everything, but this I'm glad we could get this in here before OAX. I know that any of the pieces that don't end up selling will end up being at OAX, because I'm not going to mail them back to you. I'll hand deliver them to you there. So some of these pieces that people Yannick has just jumped in and taken care of lots 2 and 3. Yannick, thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you.
And I'd love to chat with you sometime, Yannick. So give me an email, bill@comicartfans.com, and we'll take care of all the fulfillment information after the show. I appreciate that. So Marcus has an interesting idea that won't happen. So yes, so good seeing you again as always, and we'll be in touch, Kevin. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Terrific. And have fun trying to complete all that stuff with Brian. He and I have been emailing, on the side about some stuff, because he posts a lot of his work for sale on CAF as well, and right. he's been a big supporter of CAF for a long time as well. But I'm happy to see you're almost 100%, and again, we'll talk again soon.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. Enjoy the rest.